Nothing could have quite prepared me for there to be a conversation about the late Queen Elizabeth's boobs. I've seen the movie before, and yet I still was not prepared for it. Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm back with a fun little dive, recap, retrospective, if you will, on a movie called Angus, Thongs, and Perfect Snogging. So this movie is what I imagine to be peak British cinema. It is a very British coming of age movie and it came out around 15 years ago. So I thought I would talk about it today because it's like so unhinged, but also apparently half of you guys are really missing out. If you're new to this channel, first of all, brilliant video to start out with. Love this for you. I like to do recaps and reviews and rankings and occasionally make random videos as well. I've been thinking of mixing in some reaction commentary videos, but I don't know if I want to make that like a channel member exclusive thing or if I want to make that regular content in addition to what I already do. Let me know in the comments what you think about that or what you would want me to watch, because I was thinking one day, since I haven't seen that on Netflix still, but I don't know, we'll see. So Angus, Thongs, and Perfect Snogging is a gloriously unhinged piece of cinema that came out in the UK in 2008 and in the US in 2009, so it's been around 15 years for me. I was probably like 8 years old when I watched it, and this was on the Nickelodeon channel, and if you've seen this movie, you might be wondering why this was on the Nickelodeon channel. At least in hindsight, I'm surprised it was, not because the movie is particularly super raunchy, but just because the shows and movies on Nickelodeon and Disney during the 2000s were much more censored in comparison to the content of this movie. This movie was co-written and directed by Groome, who is an Indian woman, so slay. She also directed and co-wrote Bend It Like Beckham. She's iconic, so you know this movie is going to be iconic. It follows Georgia Nicholson, a 14-year-old British teenage girl living in Eastbourne, and it basically follows her awkward years and having a crush and growing up. The movie opens with Georgia dressed in an olive costume walking down the street to a costume party, and her dad is following her in the car right next to her because he's like, "You are going to get jumped." And she's like, "I can't get in the car with you, Dad. It's going to ruin my costume, and my costume is the business." It's kind of incredible how truly nothing from the 2000s aged, like low-rise jeans. No. Saying something is the business. No. Georgia arrives at the party and everyone looks at her and laughs at her. Everyone sucks because her costume is actually really epic. Is it practical? No. Is it top tier paper mache work? Yes. Also, her friends didn't tell her that they were going as something else, so when she goes up to them and is like, "Aren't we all supposed to be hors d'oeuvres?" and it was supposed to be a funny bit, her friend Jazz goes, "But boys don't like girls for funniness." Those are some shit friends. Like, at least tell her, damn. But this cues an iconic opening song with Georgia running out of that party and back down the streets back home to the song She's So Lovely, with the title of the movie appearing on the screen in the curly font. You know the curly font? I don't think there's another name for it. I think it's literally just curly font. It's the font that every third grade teacher used on their handouts. If you don't picture Georgia waddling down the streets when you hear the song She's So Lovely, have you even lived? So Georgia gets home, literally curb stomps her costume, and runs into her house, and her parents are like, "What's wrong with my child?" And that's the opener. It's a very 2008-2009 opening sequence, and it's incredible. The next morning, Georgia is tweezing her eyebrows, and for some godforsaken reason, she decides that shaving them would be better, so she takes a razor and she accidentally shaves half of one of her eyebrows off. To cover it up, instead of, drying the other half of the eyebrow on, she decides to cut her hair so that she has bangs on one side of her face swooped over that eyebrow, and oh my god, it is horrendous. She looks like she's about to start singing Fall For You by Secondhand Serenade at any second.
Because tonight will be the night that I will fall for you.
So she goes to the kitchen and we're introduced to her parents, who are very affectionate and playful with each other, and good for them. The only reason I bring that up is because the relationship between Georgia's parents becomes a concern for Georgia later in the movie, but we'll get to that.
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
Georgia then tells her family that she vows to be a mature, sophisticated young woman now that she's about to be 15 soon. It is a classic teen coming-of-age movie line. It's giving Mom, I'm 13, I'm practically an adult from Halloween Town. And then Georgia's like, "Mom, Dad, I know exactly what I want to do for my birthday party. I want a big birthday bash in a club with a DJ." And then her dad said what every adult watching this film would think, and that's, "Honey, you can't even get into a club. She wants her parents to reserve a club for her 15th birthday. There's no way I would have been able to ask for that kind of a party at 15 years old. And her parents are like, no, we're not dropping that kind of money. So Georgia heads on to school and we're introduced to her close friends and some of her peers. Her close friends are Jazz, Ellen, and Rosie. These are the friends that did her so dirty at the costume party. And something you need to know about them is that at random times throughout the movie, they break into a synchronized dance and song. It's really giving 13, 14-year-old energy. It's giving Mang from Ginny and Georgia. So they all reunite at school and then they jump right into the slut shaming. They jump right into it. I don't condone it, but it's there. Georgia's nemesis is Lindsay, who she nicknames Slaggy Lindsay. Yikes. And she pretty much hates Lindsay because she's mean, she's hot, and she dates all the guys that Georgia has crushes on at school. The only reason a 14-year-old girl needs to be a certified hater. We're then introduced to Georgia's new crush, Robbie, played by none other than Aaron Taylor Johnson. Free him. Robbie and his brother Tom are new to Georgia's school, and upon Georgia and her friends seeing them for the first time, one of Georgia's friends calls them sex gods, which we're just gonna acknowledge and move on. Georgia and her friends are like, who are these guys? Where did they come from? And rather than going up to them and introducing themselves and asking them these questions, they proceed to stalk them. Like, with binoculars, following them, jotting down every single detail down to what food they order. So unhinged. They find out that Robbie and Tom are twins, that they're 2 years above them, so they're 16. Their parents are divorced and their mom owns an organic shop nearby. Rosie already has a boyfriend, so Georgia and Jazz call dibs on Robbie and Tom. And you might be wondering, what about Ellen? Georgia tells Ellen that she can't call dibs because she needs to be more emotionally sorted in order to be ready to have a boyfriend. Couldn't help but notice that Ellen is the only brown girl in this friend group where everyone else is white, and yet she is the one who isn't apt enough for a boyfriend. Okay, so yeah, they're all shitty friends to each other, and if that doesn't prove it to you, they spend their girls' night rating each other's features, like physical features, and all of Georgia's friends give her nose and her mouth a 4 and 6 out of 10. After that, we get one of the most painfully awkward scenes of the movie. It's the next day, and Jazz and Georgia decide to go to Robbie and Tom's organic shop in order to talk to them and make their moves, I guess. And it's kind of impressive. Like, hear me out. Jazz keeps talking in a vocal fry because she thinks that would make her more attractive, but it doesn't. And Georgia keeps staring at Robbie, like damn near drooling. Also, Georgia's mom embarrasses her by coming in and talking about how apples give Georgia wind, which would make me perish personally. And yet Robbie and Tom still seem interested in them. Also, from this conversation, we learned that Robbie is in a band called the Stiff Dillons, which is a real band. So yeah, I guess they have Riz, and when Jazz and Georgia are walking home, they're both elated because the day went well until they see Lindsay and Robbie holding hands. Gag them right there, top 10 anime betrayals. And again, Georgia and her friends are all terrible to each other because her friends are like, Georgia, don't worry, you're so much better than Lindsay. And Georgia's like, how? How am I better than Lindsay? And then Jazz goes, well, you're funny? The same girl who said that boys don't like girls for funniness. Like, are you kidding me? So then they all go on another unhinged stalker side quest, and they all follow Lindsay and stalk Lindsay and watch her change outside her bedroom window. It's honestly very messed up. And like, to all of them, the fascinating thing about Lindsay is that she's a bit older. She just seems way more mature than they are. And Georgia's like, I can't compete with Lindsay because I've never kissed anyone. So Georgia's friends take her to this kid called Peter Dyer, who apparently is known for teaching girls how to kiss. So they like pimped out their friend essentially. So she goes to this kid's house, and I can't talk about the scene that happens next. It is too painful and awkward and honestly gross. Like, I would rather submerge myself in wet cement than go into the intricate details of this next scene for you guys. What I will note about the scene is that A, Peter Dyer has a gigantic poster of Hugh Grant in his room, my favorite Oompa Loompa, so like, okay, slay, I guess. B, after this scene, Georgia and her friends refer to Peter Dyer as Saliva Boy for the rest of the movie. And yes, those 2 points are in order of importance. That is all. That night at Georgia's house, Georgia tries again with the whole birthday party and a club idea to her parents, and her parents are again like, no. Then her dad reveals that he's got a promotion in New Zealand, and Georgia's parents tell Georgia, you know, we can take our time with this decision. We don't have to rush anything. You can take your time to think about it. And Georgia's like, no, Dad, you need to go. And internally, she's like, yes, I'm getting rid of my parents. Like, what did they do to you? Georgia's like, okay, I've gotten rid of a parent. I know how to kiss. Now I just need to get Robbie. Girly is on a mission. Like, shit, maybe I should have put her in my girl boss ranking. So she just needs to get Robbie. So she holds on for dear life to the one thing that she and Robbie have in common, and that is their love for cats. Real. Honestly, that's not a bad angle. Like, that is not a bad angle, not gonna lie. But here is where it gets unhinged, because of course it has to. So Georgia's plan is to fake her cat Angus going missing so that Robbie can help her find him. And in her words, she says, and then he'll discover how unfake I am, as if she's literally not deceiving him. So the plan was that Jazz was supposed to have Angus, and then when she sees Georgia and Robbie walking together, she's supposed to let go of Angus so that Robbie can find him. Instead, she gets distracted, so Angus actually runs away. So she and Tom are chasing Angus. Meanwhile, Georgia and Robbie are somewhere else trying to find him. But side note, we need to analyze these outfits because it's very 2000s limited to Disney Channel core. Like, this is what I imagine Rocky Blue would wear. So Robbie finds Angus, but again, he's with Lindsay, so he leaves to go hang out with her. And then Tom asks out Jazz. And because they're not very good friends, Georgia is really sad on the walk home and isn't really happy for her friend, but also Jazz keeps going on about Tom and isn't really comforting her friend. Side note that at this point, Georgia's dad has left, so Georgia's mom is in her single mom era. So come the day of Jazz and Tom's date, Georgia is helping Jazz get ready, and then the film hits you right upside the head with some classic 2000s fat phobia. We hate to see it, and also because they're 14, there is some very questionable dialogue, and you know, that is expected, wouldn't be realistic if there wasn't any. But I need to let you all know that Jazz refers to her pimple as Zitney Spears. Like, why did you have to do our pop icon so dirty? Also, nothing could have quite prepared me for there to be a conversation about the late Queen Elizabeth's boobs. I've seen the movie before, and yet I still was not prepared for it. After the date happens, Georgia just would not let Jazz talk about the date. Every time Jazz says something, Georgia's like, okay, cool. What about me and Robbie? Did you talk about me and Robbie? Okay, great. What about me and Robbie? And she's just overall bitter, so Georgia is the villain. Change my mind. Then we get to the first gym class scenes, starting with the gym teacher saying, let's get physical to a bunch of adolescent teenage girls, which, alright, okay. Lindsay comes up to Georgia and she's like, stay away from my man, which is honestly fair. But then she tells Georgia that she's not woman enough for him. Like, okay, bestie, you didn't have to go there. And then she trips Georgia. So really though, everyone is the villain in this movie. And then later, Robbie and Lindsay walk up to Georgia and Lindsay gives the fakest apology to Georgia in order to seem like a better person to Robbie. And Robbie's like, wow, that's really cool of you, Lindsay. The bar is so low. Free him. So while all this is happening, we learn that Peter Dyer, the guy who teaches girls how to kiss, fancies Georgia. I don't know why I said fancies. We don't say that. Anyway, Georgia and her friends go to the Sweet 16 party of one of their classmates, and while they're there, Peter comes on to Georgia very strongly. And by very strongly, I mean he drags her outside of the house and then assaults her. Need I emphasize why I'm surprised that this was on the Nickelodeon channel? Lindsay, Tom, Robbie, and Jazz all walk by as this is happening, and then Lindsay points and laughs at Georgia. And they all just stand there and watch this happen and they don't do anything about it. So there's that. The next ploy to get Robbie and Georgia together is for Georgia to accidentally run into Robbie, Tom, and Jazz at the pool. Georgia, for some godforsaken reason, decides to spray tan her legs, and that goes wrong, so her legs are so orange, like burnt sienna orange, more orange than a certain political figure that has been convicted on 34 counts. Her next mistake is suggesting that she and Robbie do handstands in the pool, and again, it's very impressive the risk she has because Robbie still kisses her after seeing her gamboge legs. But also, Robbie still has a girlfriend? So I take it back, Robbie is also a villain. After this, Georgia is expecting that Robbie is going to break up with Lindsay and end up with her, but instead that doesn't happen and Robbie kind of ghosts her. Meanwhile, Peter is just Delulu. He shows up at Georgia's door with flowers and he's like, hey babe, and she's like, hey no. And the unhinged part is instead of saying, Peter, I am not interested in you and you tried to assault me, she says, I'm a lesbian. And he's like, why are you gay?
Why are you gay?
Who says I'm gay?
You ugly.
So Georgia's gotten rid of Peter, but she's still very upset about Robbie. And to make matters worse, she learns that Lindsay moved the date of her birthday party to the same date of Georgia's birthday party. Everything is just falling apart. And to make matters even worse, Georgia's dad is gone, right? Well, Georgia's mom wants to remodel the living room as a surprise for him when he gets back, so she hires this interior designer. But this interior designer dude is like an Abercrombie model, and it's a little sus how much Georgia's mom notices that. They're also cooking together and going to salsa classes together, so Georgia's like, oh my god, my party is ruined, Robbie is ghosting me, my mom is gonna leave my dad. That's purgatory for a 14-year-old. Because Georgia's life is falling apart, the only natural solution for it is for her to make things worse by trying to make Robbie jealous. This guy named Dave asks her out to a Stiff Dylan's concert, and so she seizes this opportunity. At first I felt bad for Dave for being on this date with Georgia when she's clearly not into him, until Georgia asks him what's the first thing that he sees in a girl or notices in a girl, and he straight up says boobs. So he deserves to be a pawn in her scheme. I support women's wrongs and rights, and I choose Bear every time. The ploy is successful. Robbie can't stop looking at Georgia the entire night despite still being with Lindsay, but then Dave finds out about Georgia's plan because apparently Jazz told Tom, and Tom and Dave are friends, so Tom told Dave, so Dave calls Georgia a heartless user. Georgia is super pissed at Jazz for saying anything at all to Tom, bringing us to the next gym scene where Georgia and Jazz fight. Georgia and all of her friends suck, but Georgia has been particularly worse since being obsessed with Robbie, so Jazz does have a right to be like mad at Georgia for her behavior because she makes everything about her and Robbie. But the fight gets pretty brutal because Georgia ends up kicking Jazz in the shin, so they're not on speaking terms anymore. Robbie then later comes up to Georgia and he's angry at Georgia because Dave is also one of his friends and he didn't like the way that she treated him. Need I remind you that this is the first time that Robbie has spoken to Georgia since the pool, so like, hello? You're one to talk when it comes to leading people on. Like, you literally kissed her in the pool and then you didn't talk to her. But then he explained that he was going to break up with Lindsay and then called Georgia, but then changed his mind when he saw her on the date with Dave, which got me thinking, how long did Georgia wait? Like, was it only like 2 days? But yeah, everyone's mad at Georgia. Classic protagonist problems. Because of this, Georgia becomes full-on depression Barbie. She's upset with Robbie. She's upset with Jazz. She's upset by her parents. She really misses her dad. So she goes to her dad's UK-based office and literally rants to the receptionist about missing her dad. Then she goes home and she tells her mom that she thinks the whole family should go move with her dad to New Zealand because everyone is mad at her, and also she wants her parents to be together, so it's a win-win for her. So some time passes and Georgia is in her introspective spiritual glow-up era, and then she goes to the beach and then sees Robbie there. She starts apologizing, and then he says that he broke up with Lindsay, and then he says the funniest line in the entire movie. He says, "I wrote you a song. It's called Bitch in a Uniform."
You know, I wrote a song about you.
Really?
It's called Bitch in a Uniform.
Bitch in a Uniform on my Spotify Wrapped is a need. Despite telling Georgia all this, Robbie's like, I can't stop thinking about you, so let's go out. Like, again, Georgia somehow has Riz. But Georgia's like, I'm moving to New Zealand, and he's like, damn. Okay. So more time passes, and then it's Georgia's 15th birthday, and her mom is like, I'm gonna take you dancing for your birthday. Nothing like going out clubbing with your mom for your 15th birthday. But surprise, her 15th birthday party is at a club, and Jazz helped organize it, and the whole school is there. So she and Jazz are friends again without any sort of like apology of any sorts. Also, the Stiff Dylans are playing at the club. Also, surprise, her dad is there. Also, double surprise, the interior designer is there, and he's gay, so there's never anything between him and her mom, and her parents are fine. Also, another surprise, because of the rant to the receptionist, they offered her dad a UK position, so they're not moving away. There was just a lot being resolved in literally 2 minutes. So everything's all fine and dandy, hunky-dory, until Lindsay crashes the party. She goes up on stage and she's like, Robbie, it's me? Or Sad Olive Girl. And Robbie chooses Georgia, of course. Then Jazz goes up on stage and rips the chicken cutlets out of Lindsay's bra, so Lindsay storms off, and yay, Georgia and Robbie are together. And we end the film with Georgia saying, I don't care anymore about looking perfect. It's so overrated. I don't need a nose job or blonde hair, cause my sex god boyfriend likes me just the way I am. Chef's kiss, no notes. Dialogue like this is a high mark of an iconic film, so that is Angus, Thongs, and Perfect Snogging, a whole 93 unhinged minutes. Okay, listen, is this movie off its rocker? Yeah. Is it still a fun watch? Yeah. As much as I made fun of the movie, to its credit, it got the relatability aspect down. Like, Georgia is just a young teenage girl dealing with insecurities, comparing herself to other people, wanting to be like an adult but still needing her parents. Like, all of that is still very relatable, and the parts that are really, really cringy to watch, it's also like very much what really young teens are like, and you also look back at your 14-year-old self and cringe like that. So there's some reality to it with how 14-year-olds are, still unhinged to its core though. Like Angus, Thongs, and Perfect Snogging should be in the thesaurus for the word unhinged. But I hope you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment your thoughts on the movie, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already.